great to see so many excitement about API. So I'm going like quickly introduce what it is, right? So, I'm hoping a lot of you know like what Perplexity is, right? It's sort of like a next generation answer engine. And we started over 2 years ago now, and from the very beginning we kind of like had this conviction is that if we want to build very successful and large kind of like product that a lot of people across the world are going to use, we need to build a lot of solid infrastructure from the beginning, right? So because like infrastructure is the only thing that's going to sort of like make us competitive and can afford like very great service, at low cost and great performance. So over like last 2 years, we've been building this, and primarily the main decision here was like power our product, right? So when you go to Perplexity, all of the infrastructure that we build is kind of like at play, right? So the search engine, the LLMs, all of the other like supporting pieces is all there. And so more recently, as we sort of like realized as our product been growing, and I think the infrastructure was getting like more matured, it became clear that a lot of people kind of like have a lot of use cases for it, and they want to use have something like this for their case. And so in this January, we kind of decided to start offering this service as an API, and essentially, people can get the access to all of the infrastructure that we built throughout the years. And now I'm kind of going to explain some of the features of this LLM grounded API, and then we're going to go into more details about like performance benchmarks. Next slide, please. Yeah. So first of all, I think we, as we were like working on this problem, it became like very clear there is kind of like different type of queries people ask on the internet, right? Sometimes there's like something very simple where you just maybe want to like check, verify what's the recent news, like what happened in the world, or like that query doesn't require like a lot of compute. But on the other hand, there are like queries where you kind of like want to maybe do a little bit like thinking, like maybe the query is like more complicated, it requires like some reasoning, it requires like multi-step planning and stuff like that. And so you would love to allocate more compute to that query, because otherwise, if you don't do that, the final answer is not to be as great and not as useful. And so we, in our main product, trying to sort of like classify this as automatically, so the end user don't have to think about it. But obviously for developers, I think those folks want to have like more control. So we kind of like allowing this level of flexibility where your use case is better, so you kind of like can predict what kind of how much compute you want to spend on it. Obviously, like more compute, the more expensive it's going to be, and so we decided that's going to be a great sort of like feature for the product to support. So if you want something quick, something that's going to be very cheap, but like work well on the simple queries, you can use settings with the low search mode. So that's is going to do like well on whatever use case you want. But on the other hand, if it's something more complicated, you probably want to allocate more compute, and so that's also going to work well. Next slide, please. The other thing we realized, sorry, is that our early version of the API, there was a lot of like complexity. It was the sort of like counting the way the whole system works. You kind of like you have to perform search first, and then you retrieve the relevant tokens from the search pages, and then you kind of like putting them into a LLM. And so a lot of it we're doing on the back end, and we realized it's like very complicated to the end users to sort of like reason about it. And it's like sometimes like pricing was not transparent, where sometimes you can ask like, okay, so like why we're like charge so many tokens for like citations? Why is this query is like more expensive than the other, even though like maybe it's simpler? So to address this problem, we recently been working hard on kind of like simplify these things, right? So like you don't have to think about this anymore. We actually, through this process, which is very great to see as well, we optimized several pieces of this API, and turns out we're able to offer even cheaper queries. So if you switch to this new offering, you would note one thing that you would notice without any quality degradation, your average cost per query is going to go down. So, and that was only possible because we kind of like, okay, like decided to look deep into this and see, okay, so what are the limitations? Where can we actually be more efficient at extracting only relevant tokens and kind of like not putting in garbage or like things that are like not going to be useful for answering this particular question. And so a lot of work went to it, but we were like pretty proud of the result. And so because we made the system more efficient, I think now it becomes even more like competitive because it became cheaper than like other providers. So that was, I think, like some of the things that you guys, I hope, are going to like a lot. Next slide. Right. So the other, I think this is at the core, like in the very first version that we released, I think for us, it was like very important. Okay, how can we, redefine the frontier where, we can offer the best performance at the lowest cost, right? We've been thinking about this like for a long time because this is eventually kind of like how we intend to run our product as we get into more users, more queries, people asking on Perplexity. I think it's very important for us to minimize the cost of serving it. Obviously, it's just because we have to run like this LLMs, we spend a lot of effort to, making sure our inference stack is very efficient, our like search infrastructure is very efficient and things like that. So a lot of work over like last 2 years went into enabling this, but so now we kind of like happy to offer it for you. And so I'm gonna go like talk a little bit more in details about the performance. Next slide, please. And yeah, before we're gonna go there, it's kind of like we also, for whatever different cases you might have, there is besides just like this like different modes of how much compute you want to create, there is also like different options to even like define the workflow you want to have. So more recently, I think it became like very popular things like deep research, where you can even like ask API to perform something like very complicated, something that is gonna like type of queries that can run for like 10 minutes or whatever. Obviously gonna cost like a lot more, but they can scan through like hundreds and hundreds of pages, analyze the content of those pages, like do like multi-step reasoning and planning, and then sort of like producing this like very complicated answer. So those cases, we kind of like offer a variety of them, so you can choose depending on the use case, and hopefully, if you guys have like different use cases, even more like in the future, we'll be able to support it. So, but we kind of like trying to build our API offerings in a way that it is exactly what developers want and what end users want. So we kind of like want to be as flexible as possible and satisfy as many cases as possible. Next slide. And I think the other thing that we did from the very beginning, I think it's super important, is we all the data that you send into API, we don't store it. So we have we're like very clear about this from the very beginning. It was just we're gonna have like a zero retention policy. So like none of the data that is sent is being used for like training or like anything else. So I think that's also should put you at ease with some of the concerns about privacy, data retention, stuff like that. So it makes our work harder sometimes to like when we have to debug certain things, we obviously cannot do it because we don't have data, but we found better ways to do those things. So and hence we were able to enable this feature. Cool. So now let's talk about the more interesting stuff. It actually, how this API compares to competitors. So as I mentioned, we have like several offerings. I think two main horses is Sonar and Sonar Pro. So Sonar is kind of like the faster version that takes less compute, but very good at the sort of like everyday type of queries where you just want to get like something like a very fast, very cheap grounded answer. And so this is where we spend a lot of time like optimizing things. And the great thing we can see is just like we at a much cheaper price point, we can outperform actually competition, like in the forms of like GPT-4 4.0 mini and GPT-4o. There is a more powerful version of Sonar, so that one is a bit more expensive. But as I said, is useful for like some other cases. But they're like both very performant. So next slide, please. So we one of the benchmarks we by the way run like internally lots of other benchmarks that's kind of private, that we have like different ideas how like we want to optimize this API. A lot of this is comes from our product itself, but we also use a lot of like publicly available benchmarks to compare ourselves. So one of the benchmarks actually was released by OpenAI. It's sort of like this benchmark of like Q&A where there is like some random facts over internet that usually a normal LLM just fails to answer because it just doesn't know this information, and so you have to use so like grounding for it. And the maximum score here is like 100, and in fact actually the true maximums here is like maybe around like 95% because there's like actually some errors in the data set. And so as you can see, we can do very well. So like both model kind of like outperforms comparable model in the class. And honestly, like Sonar Pro Premier basically just like saturates this benchmark. So I think that like as I said, like maximum score could be like 95. So this one is a great one, but let's move to the next slide. But I think like more importantly, it's as I said, it's sometimes it is important to not only evaluate on the sort of this like academic benchmarks and data sets, but also actual feeling how user like perceive the product, the final answer. And so there is this website, it's called LMC Serena, where people been for longest time, for like last 1-2 years, evaluating the models. So there would be like primarily it was like chat models, but more recently these guys introduced another benchmark. It was like specifically tailored for the search LLMs that was grounding, and so they've been running this test. And to our surprise, I think we were very happy to see that all of our models scored very high. And in fact, the first place was shared between us and the very new version of Gemini, which is like much more expensive. So it was kind of like great to see that we can both perform at the frontier where the most complicated queries can be answered, but also can do like very well at the super fast and kind of like optimized way. So I think that kind of like should give you guys confidence that this API is the state of the art and can produce very good results for you. Next slide. Yeah, and so importantly, obviously, this as I mentioned, all of this is we can offer also at very favorable cost. So if you can define this graph, kind of like frontier performance at the cost. So on the right hand side, you can see like this like OpenAI models or like Google models, right? So they kind of like score similarly, but at much higher price points. So like for example, for our like best model, the like 1,000 requests roughly is going to cost like around like $15. And then on the other hand, like for OpenAI or Google, it's going to be around like $35. But like for fastest and cheapest model, still you're getting like much better result than the competition, but it's going to cost you like way less. It's going to be around like $5 to $6 for like 1,000 queries. So it should be a pretty good deal. And we obviously continue working very hard to keep this frontier up. Hopefully we'll release even like cheaper prices or like better performance over time. Next slide. So this is kind of some maybe like more examples of like how like a typical 1,000 requests, how much it's going to cost like with the different modes as those that I mentioned before. So if you want to like something very cheap, you can get like the Sonar, going to work well for all of the use cases, even like with the low settings. But if you want to tackle something more advanced, then there is like other offerings with like Sonar Pro High. Remarkable though, even like our best model is still cheaper than the simplest model from OpenAI, for example. So I think it should be like no-brainer. Next. So to kind of like summarize, we can deliver very high performance at a very low cost. I think it's right now like state of the art here. And then, there are like multiple tiers, multiple options for you to choose. We, as I mentioned before, we primarily like specialized in a search and grounded LLM. So I think this is the only thing we kind of like really focusing on. And so we have like a lot of other ideas and already like some outgoing projects, how to simplify this and make it even better. So yeah, expect more releases to come. And so there's already like a lot of people have been using our API, and so I'm gonna maybe talk about like some of the use cases, how you can sort of like think about where you can integrate. So if you want to just sort of like run this like very simple queries for like everyday life, I think that Sonar and Sonar Pro is going to be the best choice depending on the complexity of the queries. There is also models that can support reasoning. So sometimes those are going to be good where you kind of like want to deeply, you get like some search results maybe that require like some reasoning, maybe there's like some computation needs to be done, or some like deeper understanding of the content of the LLMs of the provided pages. So I think reasoning in that case is going to be a little bit like slower because the model needs to reason about the document. But like usually what we've seen, the answers much more sort of like reliable and much more accurate. And the final sort of like the beast is the research. This is where sort of like we use the largest models. Those models usually operate on the large or the long trajectories of like 10 and over steps. So they scan through, they issue like maybe like 50 different searches, scan through like hundreds and hundreds of pages, and kind of like deeply analyze that. So that this is very, I would say, like expert type of use case. We actively working and actually already have like a better prototypes that's going to make it cheaper and better and faster. So yeah, stay tuned, please. But I think this is yeah, things that's going to come soon. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so some of our happy customers. So we've been working with Zoom for quite some time now, and been actually Zoom has been using our API to power their AI companion in the Zoom. So like for example, every time you ask some question that requires like grounding, so Zoom actually goes and queries our API. So and they've been very happy. We've been receiving a lot of like positive feedback from them. A lot of like feature requests as well. So it was great to see that such a great company is relying on our API. Yes, some of the sort of like case studies, some of the examples you can think of how you can use this. So let's say like you doing like something in like maybe kind of like market analysis and stuff like that. So you can kind of like figure out, okay, so what is going on with the cloud-based collaboration. So yeah, the our API is gonna go like fetch bunch of relevant pages for this topic. I'm gonna reach from those pages, gonna retrieve like relevant tokens. Not everything is gonna need it, and then kind of like provide based on that very eloquent and comprehensive answer. So that can just save a lot of your time. So you can imagine if you have to do this manually, you probably have to use Google, query a bunch of different queries and kind of like analyze lots of pages manually. So that would take you a lot of time. So here you can get a great summary. And the other thing actually, which is I think is very important, not only we provide the answer, we provide also this citation. So if for whatever reason you kind of like want to verify if the information is accurate, or you kind of like want to maybe dive deeper on your own, so you can take those links that we cite, and then you can just go there and kind of like read more about it. So yeah, so it's kind of like double purpose. So the other customer of ours is Greenboard. So I think they've been using our API for their like compliance system, and so there's some of the examples here of like integration where as you can see, it takes the context of whatever information that they provide, and kind of like based on that generates like relevant queries. searches the web, and returns like answers. So yeah, it was also great work with that company. Yeah, some of the type of queries that they run is again like very deep, sort of like analysis of recent, enforcements from SEC, and then yeah, it was, they were like pretty happy so far with our API, and hopefully, more things gonna come from us. Cool. Next slide. Yeah, so I mean that's basically been like very short sort of like overview. I think we have a lot of documentation on our website. I think our team is, also like very eager to answering questions, and sort of like receiving like feature requests, and providing like support or whatever. So if you guys are using our API, would be very happy to, and very eager to work closely together for anything. But yeah, right now I can take a Q&A. Thanks for listening.
Nice. Thanks so much, Dennis. I know we were trying to get a lot of information packed in a short amount of time, and thanks so much for all the questions. I know a lot of folks like, hey, will I get the credit? We'll make sure that all registrants will get the credit afterwards. Just make sure on you can head over Perplexity into the API settings and create an account with this email that you registered for the event for. Dennis, a couple of questions that came in. We recently introduced small, medium, large for context sizes. Can you share a little bit more? Like, what was the thinking behind there? Like, how can folks best use it to make it more cost effective as well?
Yeah, so I think that the reasoning actually twofold. I think first one, as I mentioned, is kind of like simplifying the API and make it more predictable in terms of like how much it's going to cost. So before we were kind of like charging users per whatever like tokens they're going to spend on citations, and that was not deterministic outcome. Sometimes it can be more than you expect, sometimes it can be less than you expect. So it's kind of like very hard if like trying to run like tight ship, kind of like very kind of like careful about like how much you spend on this APIs. I think we noticed like from the users feedback, it was very hard for them to reason about it. Like they would say like, oh, today I run like the same amount of queries, but it was like costing more than yesterday. So why is that? And so to address this problem, we kind of like, okay, so what can we do here? Let's kind of like revisit the system. Can we give like strong guarantees? Is just like this is we're not gonna performance is gonna stay the same, but like we're just gonna give like strong guarantees that each query is not going to cost more than X, right? No matter like even sometimes we probably need to spend more compute on depending on the query. And so but then also it became obvious then, okay, so like sometimes people want to like have some control over it, so they just don't want to like the same mode. Sometimes they can better understand their use case, and so sometimes they can choose like maybe like cheaper offering, or like more expensive depending on the complexity. And so we thought this is going to strike like very good balance between still allowing flexibility, but also give people confidence that they're going to know like how much they're going to spend in advance. And as I mentioned, I think it's like very important to emphasize again is that through this process we actually figure out a way where we can make it actually more efficiently. And because of that, we were able to lower the prices. So you would, as I mentioned before, you generally should see that the price per average query is going to be lower than it used to be. Cool. All right. So I think Jenny is maybe dropped out. Let me ask someone. Okay, I think Jenny's getting back. Okay, so maybe James, I guess you can. Yeah, sorry, I think Jenny has some technical difficulties. Maybe James, you can read the other questions.
Right. So in terms of other questions, what can we ask? Are there any improvements planned, to our models in general, particularly deep research, for example?
Yeah. So we are actively working. In fact, right now like already evaluating new model that we that should be more capable in our like early evaluations. And I think the other thing is we can offer it at the same price. So yeah, the model is going to be much better than we have right now. No price increase. So this is for normal Sonar and Sonar Pro. Also, I think deep research is a very big focus for us. And like literally right before this meeting, I received like some results where we have a new system that performs much better than the previous one. So expect some changes coming out soon. So I think we kind of like want to double down both on the simple model, but also like deep research. I think is going to be very important.
Right. Thanks a lot for clarifying that, Dennis. Let's see. Let's see. What are other features in general that are planned to be introduced on the roadmap in the near future?
Yeah, I think one of the other feature we want to add, and I think that's going to be very important. We are working on adding like MCP natively, so people into APIs, so people will be able to, connect their sources of information into the API. So not only you will be able to rely on web, but you will be able to rely on other information. So that will also include like custom like file uploads, maybe even connecting like particular like data sources, like let's say like Google Drive or stuff like that. So then I think the power of this actually is when you can combine private data with the public data and kind of like chain the reasoning around it. I think it becomes like very powerful. Like imagine you have like some document where there's like some information that you want to research, and you kind of like gonna ask our API to like read this information, like research on it, like go back and forth with the web, like analyze this document and produce like report. I think that's where you will start seeing like some really useful use cases.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks a lot for clarifying that, Dennis. One last one, maybe. We have a lot of folks asking us about various language supports, right? As you know, this is a very international webinar. So what plans do we have in the near future to support more languages? How are you planning to address that?
Yeah, that's an active area of research. I think we obviously started first with kind of like primarily focusing on English and maybe like some other more popular languages. But as we grew, like we've Perplexity has been used across the entire globe, and I think we actively working right now for like adding support for other languages. It takes some time, but I think it's essential for what we do. And so yeah, I hope we're going to release some changes over time that going to improve performance in the other languages.
Okay. Maybe I can ask you this one too, assuming we still have a bit of time. So last one, maybe, like, how do you prioritize sources, when it comes to like generating the final answer?
Yeah, this is a great question. This is a lot of like thinking went into it. Essentially, what we built this like a ranking system that um, basically decides which documents. It kind of like essentially there's like two main signals for this ranking. So the first signal is like how trustful is the source in the document. So is it coming from like trustable domain, or like is it spam, right? So that's a very important piece. And the other one is is this information even relevant? Like it could be so that domain is trustable, but like it just like the document doesn't talk about the question at hand at all. And so we've been balancing sort of like these two signals into like creating something that is kind of like enhanced in both, excel in both. And yeah, it took a lot of experimentation. Still, by no means this work is done. I think we're gonna keep improving the system. But I think I would say like two main ingredients here just would be is the source trustworthy, and if it has like relevant information or not.
Okay. Thank you very much. So a lot of users are asking about the best practices in mapping both the web and files, so connecting to your integrations. So currently, what do we support, and what other plans we have to support, like to better improve this experience in the future as well?
Yeah, I think that I would suggest here that this is a type of use cases where you likely need a more powerful model, because usually what happens in those use cases, you kind of like, okay, so you have these files, you look at them, then you look at the query, you probably need to have model to kind of like retrieve relevant information from the files itself first. And so so it does that. So then the next step likely is going to be based on this information that you retrieve, like go like search internet and give me like relevant documents. And maybe you want to do this like it's going to do this like back and forth like a couple of times. So this is right now only to really excel at this task. You have to use some of more advanced models and some of more advanced like API offerings that we have. I do expect over time, as the inference and the model capabilities become like more efficient, I think the price of it is going to go down. But I think it's already like this is, for some of the use cases, it already makes a lot of sense and actually economically valuable and feasible.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Denis. In general, a lot of our folks here are just, getting started with the API in general. What is your best recommendation, for a quick start on this, and sort of like getting started and playing around with it in general?
Yeah, I think that the best, we kind of like, still very small team working a lot on like improving the, like tools that we offer, where you can like, for example, like very quickly play with the API, very quickly like read documentation, like see how much you spend. So this is all going to come very soon. But in general, my advice would be, get this API, see what kind of like use cases you have, and like try to essentially like prototype something. So that one of the reasons I think we excited to give this credit is that it basically just like has no yeah, it's like very easy for you to start. You don't have to pay anything. You just $50 I think is gonna go a long way. Like that's probably gonna be like, I don't know, like 10,000 queries you can run. So that's gonna be more than enough to like evaluate the performance and like see if it's optimize the prompt, see if it's gonna be valuable for your use case. And then if you find out that things are well, yeah, you can scale it. But like I would suggest, I think it's very important when you start like working with LLMs, I think it's important to first have a use case in mind and have sort of like a success criteria, like maybe evaluation data set or something like that, where you can clearly see if this system that you build is actually can perform well on those critical tasks that you wanted to do. You have that, I think it makes your iteration loop much faster, and you kind of like, it gives you like the direction where you need to go.
Definitely. Yeah. Any other cases that you've been excited about or you've seen customers build with the API?
Yeah, I think I've seen there's this like interesting use case, which is maybe not that common, but there is this trivia competition, I think organized by like Robinhood. And so the person who won this competition, I mean, he kind of like cheated, but like basically he used our API to answer those trivia questions. And he did it in the fastest way, because he could just like rely on the LLMs instead of humans. And I think he won like $1 million or something. So that was like pretty funny to see. But in general, I think we kind of like working a lot with the sort of this like big and serious customers. I think some of them we already show, like Zoom. I think there's some other like investment banks, and I think yeah, those people, those folks like value yeah, accuracy. I think the accuracy is the most important, I think, because if you gonna rely on this like information for your decision making, you basically want to make sure that you can trust the information that you receive. And I think this is at the core of our company. We kind of like strive to produce the most relevant and accurate answers, and so we continue to do so.
All right. Regarding the sources that we access our data from, do we read articles with paywalls? How do we handle misinformation in general?
Yeah, so yeah, obviously we don't read articles with paywalls. Our API respects the robots.txt. So essentially, if somebody like doesn't allow us to crawl their websites, so you won't be able to see this information. We actually are actively working with a lot of like publishers, a lot of like websites to sort of like build those relationships, because we and there's like a lot of I think we have this like publisher program, I think, where a lot of like publishers are actually happy to give the content. So yeah, in general, I think we operating like as a normal search engine. So if something that is available for us to crawl, then we do it. If not, then we sort of like trying to work with the webmaster to get access.
All right. Thanks a lot for clarifying that, Dennis. Any guidance around prompt engineering in general, and how does that differ from prompting for traditional LLMs? As a matter of fact, team, we have a prompt guide available in our docs, by the way, specifically for this. But Dennis, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit trickier, because there is a kind of like, comparing to like just a plain LLM, I think there's like this different factor of extra information that is going to be injected into LLM, which is this search tokens. And so sometimes that obviously is going to give LLM like make LLM powerful because it has access to the most recent information, but also it makes it a little bit like more challenging to prompt it right, because the search result is going to influence a little bit how the answers is going to look. And so I would say in general, all of the kind of like pretty much like all of the techniques that you've been using for general LLMs, I think they should be applicable. But I would say, like, again, like coming back to my previous point, I think it's important to have like evaluation criteria, like an evaluation data set, where you can then run maybe like on a larger set of examples and see if this is what you want. But yeah, I think it's I think default settings, where if you just go and like use it, it's going to be like very well optimized by us already. But if you need some customization, I think it should be possible as well.
Okay, thanks a lot. In general, what plans do we have in the near future to improve our enterprise offering specifically?
Right. I think there's a lot of exciting things in our roadmap. Primarily, we keep adding like additional data sources, right? So we are working with like various companies for where we can not only use like rely on the web sources, but like also get some third-party data, which could be useful for like whatever research you can imagine, like financial data or stuff like that. The other one, I think we actively working on improving deep research for enterprise. We had like we're gonna have like some announcements soon. We made a lot of like progress improving like quality of this and performance. I think for enterprise specifically, I think it's going to be like very important, because enterprise, the type of query people ask there is just like usually much more complicated, because it's usually for like real work, like real stuff people do. And so I think the things like deep research is going to be like very important there. Obviously, the other thing that we're working on is the browser. I think like browser is going to be very useful for enterprise as well, as it will allow like unique access to like specific like data that is otherwise like not accessible. So, and combining this with the like deep research workflows is going to be very powerful.